Hello, manic.mercurian here with a month forecast, and I am posting this publicly just to show that, I do the birth chart readings for sure. I like doing those. I'll probably never get tired of them. They're always fun and interesting to do, probably my specialty. But I can do other types of readings as well. So this would be just one example. This will be a month forecast for May. I know that we're already well into May. We're pretty much halfway through the month, but I thought it would still be good to go back over the last couple of weeks, see what insight and context I can provide, and then use that to go forward into the next couple weeks and see what's happening there. And I'll be looking at my notes over here. If you see me looking over here, these are my notes that I'm kind of going over. And I am posting this publicly, but just remember that any reading I do, I only post it publicly with permission from the person getting the reading. It's completely up to you. I can also post readings privately as well. And if you are interested in getting a reading, you can email me at manic.mercurian@gmail.com. And I'll also link a video in the description that has more information on the types of readings that I offer. All right. And okay, and then for this, I'll be going back and forth. That's pretty much what you do with a forecast, is you go back and forth between the current transits, or the transits for whatever time you're looking at. That would be the chart that you're seeing now. So we're starting with April 30th. And then I'll go back and forth to the birth chart of the person in question that I'm doing this reading for. So this is the birth chart reading. This is the birth chart that we're looking at to use for the month forecast reading. And basically, that's all it is. It's just looking at, where were the planets during this person's birth, and then how does that kind of fit? What's the relationship, or what's the feeling? What are the vibes going on that this person is experiencing with, whatever transits are going on, as seen here. All right, and before we get into the specifics, I'll go day by day and go through any major aspects that are going on. But before I get into that, I wanted to provide some general context. Now, I've been talking with this person. She's a regular of mine, and she was saying that, she's been feeling pretty down lately. Things are kind of hard. Things are not maybe what she expected them to be. And although that is sad to hear, it does kind of make sense looking at the astrology here, because while looking at this chart here, I would say that, your main three areas of focus in your own birth chart, the main three areas that the gist of your whole personality, your being, and the vibes you're working with are represented by, would be Cancer up here, because the moon and midheaven are there. Those are both pretty important. Virgo with the sun, Venus, and Mars, and then Libra with the ascendant and Mercury. All right, so those are the three main focuses, and so again, we're kind of looking at how do the transits match up with those energies among the other energies in the chart as well. And right now, if you look at the transits as we close out April and go into early May, the main focus for the transits is Taurus and Pisces. Excuse me, Taurus with Sun, Moon, Uranus, North Node there, and then Mercury has just entered Gemini at this point at 0 degrees Gemini. And then we've got 4 planets in Pisces as well. It's a big focus. So Mars, Neptune, Venus, and Jupiter all in Pisces. So that's where the general focus is. I want to pay special attention to Taurus and even the beginning of Gemini, because that's where not only the eclipses will happen in May, but also Mercury Retrograde. So that's probably the biggest focus, more than anything else. But especially as we approach the beginning of May, it's Taurus and Pisces. So to get a general feel for how that is, how you're experiencing that, we can look to how Taurus and Pisces are situated in your chart. And as you can see here, they're both close to the descendant. Ascendant is over here. Descendant is exactly opposite. So all the focus is pretty much way on the other side of your chart from your identity, which is more like Libra and Virgo, more like Cancer, but all the planets are kind of over here. So this in your chart, this is the area of other people. So it's your relationships, your obligations to other people, things of that nature. And it can be difficult because during this time of year, but especially this year with the way that outer planets are situated, it's like the planets are not really supporting your energies, or they're not in energies that are familiar or easy for you to work with. They're way kind of far away from most of your natal planets, and I think that's where a lot of the difficulty comes in. that's also where it ends up being about relationships or about other people, because the spotlight is not on you right now, it's on the people in your life. So you're almost living vicariously right now through other people. um, and there will also be major transformations with your relationships right now, and I think that's part of the difficulty that you're experiencing. A lot of times before we have a major aspect, we experience this kind of buildup going up to it. And that buildup can be very difficult because it's not just a buildup, building up to this major release of energy that will bring in something new. It's also an ending, it's a death. Whenever we have a conjunction or almost kind of any major aspect, it signifies the beginning of something new, but also the ending of something old. And endings are difficult for us. So my point is, as we approach this intensity in May, because there is a lot of intensity going on with the eclipses and Mercury retrograde, among other things, I think this is almost an ending for you, especially in terms of your relationships. And that could signify, maybe you having friendships or romantic relationships literally ending and starting something new. Or it could also just mean that there's going to be a transformation of how you relate to other people. So, what are your boundaries, or what are your preferences? What's your approach to relationships in general? So I just want to make that clear. Um, a lot of times this can be an ending in relationships, but it could be that you're continuing, associating with the same people, but just in a much different way. And again, that can be very, very difficult leading up to it. And then typically once we get these major aspects happening, then there's this transformational period, and then afterward it should be much easier. Okay, and I'll get into more specifics regarding when all this will happen here, going into the month forecast. Two things I want to mention. Like I kind of alluded to, the major events for May are the Mercury retrograde and the eclipses, both of which are happening mostly centered around the last half of Taurus and then the beginning of Gemini. We'll also have a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio, but it's all about this axis, Scorpio and Taurus, particularly Taurus, and then just the beginning of Gemini as well. So for you, this area falls into your eighth house. Eighth house is one of the more challenging aspects to experience. Again, because the reason why is because the eighth house doesn't form a strong aspect with the ascendant. So, your identity is marked by your ascendant, by Libra in this case, and it's just hard for you to see the eighth house. It's hard for you to connect there. It's not a strong energy for you. So that can be very difficult, but also more specifically, eighth house deals with shared resources. Eighth house is just after seventh house. Seventh house is where, you focus on relationships a lot. And then after developing those relationships comes, the eighth house where you suddenly have to know, can you really trust these people that you have relationships with? Can you, shared resources are a big part of that. So what happens if you have to share the rent or like utilities, or what if you have to, what if there's times of scarcity or hardship? Can you count on the people in your relationships? And besides, intimate partnerships and, seeing if you can really trust people, seeing if you can count on people, eighth house also has to do with shared resources in general. So that would be debts, loans. It's money that you owe other people, but it's also money that other people may owe you. So there's debts, but also inheritances there. So that's where I would really pay special attention to in your life for this next month, because there can be dramatic changes there. The second eighth house axis really pertains to money more than anything. How are you supported? And so a lot of it is how are you supported emotionally as well, going back to those relationships in your life. That's a big part of it. But a lot of it comes down to money. How do you support yourself? And then what are you investing in? What are you investing in terms of relationships, but also literally investing in financially? And that, would pertain to like stocks or loans, things like that. But it can also just be like, what are you investing your time in? Where are you putting your time and energy? Those are resources as well. So that's the general focus, and that's where I would expect a lot of change here. And it will only be after going through this transformation with your relationships and with your financial situation that I think you'll feel a lot of relief and things will get lighter and easier for you. One last thing before I get into the specifics here. Another thing that we can wait for that will be a much easier time for you, because that's something you were asking about. You're saying, you've been kind of having a hard time lately, and you're wondering when this will end, when it will get easier. One thing that I could say that would apply to, it's kind of almost like a seasonal thing for you, but this year would be especially hard the way the outer planets are. One thing that would be hard is that, like I said, the planets are on this side of the chart right now, so they're in an area that's relatively empty for you, and that's kind of opposing your, this cluster here that you have in Virgo and Libra is kind of opposing where the planets are transiting right now. So that would be difficult just because there's a disconnect there. It won't be until late June going into July that the inner planets will come around and they'll start to conjoin your moon. That would be a much easier energy for you because you have so much of your focus in Cancer. You have your moon in Cancer, your midheaven in Cancer. It's a very public area for you. It's an area of career, and so once the planets come around there, late June going into July, then you'll feel much more in your element. And again, this is something I would expect every year, but it's even more extreme kind of this year. Things would be difficult in late winter going into spring relatively for you. So you could have like maybe some seasonal depression as well. A lot of that kind of does come up in the astrology because not only are you literally dealing with the seasons, but also being a person that was born in late summer and having all your planets kind of around these summer and early fall signs, you just don't have a lot of energy resonating with this general time of year. So that would be a difficulty as well. Okay, so hopefully I've covered enough of the general background here so we can get into the specifics here. Okay, and I'm just making one more note. I don't want to forget about this because, well, I guess I could cover this too before we get into the forecast. So, okay, one last thing is something that is definitely there for you to look forward to is that you do have an upcoming Jupiter return. This is something that we experience every 12 to 13 years where Jupiter does a full cycle around the zodiac, and it comes back to the place where Jupiter was when we were born. So for you, you have your Jupiter right at the end of Aries. It's at 28 degrees Aries, and as I'm making this video, Jupiter has just recently entered Aries. So it is in your same Aries, it's in your same sign. It won't exactly cross, your natal Jupiter for another year or so, but it is definitely approaching there. And when it does cross your natal Jupiter, we basically experience a year of prosperity, growth, abundance. Things are relatively easy. We of course have to look to all the other aspects and transits to see a full picture of what's going on. But Jupiter, coming back around and conjoining our natal Jupiter is generally a really, really prosperous time. It's a very easy aspect to work with, and it typically marks the easiest year we experience every 12 years, if that makes sense. So every 12 years we get 1 year that's super, super easy, and that year is fast approaching for you. And again, it could be very, very difficult approaching that time. Because the same thing applies that I was talking about earlier. Before Jupiter crosses our natal Jupiter, we have to close out that cycle, and it can be very difficult leading up to it. But then once we have that exact aspect of transiting Jupiter conjoining our natal Jupiter, that's where the prosperity and the easiness and the expansion begins for you. All right, and again, like I said, that won't happen for another year, but you're getting there. You're getting close. It'll go by faster than you think. Okay, so that was a lot of background. Let's get into the specifics here. So we actually start out. Let's go to the transits. We start out April 30th, and the reason why I'm starting way back April 30th is because there was a new moon solar eclipse on that day, which is a pretty big deal. It was at 10 degrees Taurus, and for you, that's in your 7th house, I believe. 10 degrees Taurus, yes, it is. So, in short, this would mark a major new beginning in terms of your relationships, okay? And I know we've talked since April 30th, and you're saying that things are still pretty, not very satisfactory with relationships. A lot of times with new moons, sometimes there is a major shift on that day because, that's where the new beginning literally happens. But sometimes it's not until the moon begins to gain more light that we really experience the kind of ramifications of that new beginning. Or in other words, how can I put this? So, like, something might change during the new moon, but its effects aren't actually widely felt and really known to us until usually the quarter moon about a week later. All right. So, but there should be some kind of new beginning with your relationships there, and this can in itself can be unsettling as well because change can be hard. But I would expect some kind of major shift there, either attracting new relationships to your life or just redefining how do you deal with relationships, how do you associate with other people, how do you express yourself. All these types of things are kind of coming into question and are sort of ripe for some changes right now for you, I would think. Okay, and then going to let's jump forward to May 2nd, and I'll have to jump forward day by day here. I wish planetwatcher.com was still up and running because I really preferred that site, but it's been down for quite some time now. Anyway, so May 2nd, Venus enters Aries, and this is something I wanted to pay special attention to because for you, Aries is where your descendant is, and I don't remember if I said it, but I will kind of continue going back and forth between the natal chart and the current transits. But for you, Aries is where your descendant is, so this is the area of relationships for you. It's the kind of people you attract. I talked about in a previous reading that you would literally attract Aries type people. So you would attract kind of outgoing and dominant, initiating people, leaders, and people that are more kind of aggressive or fiery. Okay, but also just in general, it's your area, your sector of relationships. So with Venus entering that sign for you, um, it will approach your descendant, and when it does, it will add extra kind of abundance, pleasure, desire there. And again, this can be, on the one hand, it can be difficult because Venus is opposing your ascendant. So Venus is not, it's not directly supporting you. So it's not you that is, experiencing this pleasure and abundance directly. It may be the people in your life that are. And you can experience, pleasure and abundance, these kind of easy, fun Venus themes. You can experience that, but you would be experiencing that through other people in your life, and that's where the relationship focus comes in. So, it's other people in your life that may be more attractive or fun for you to hang out with or to spend time with. That's where you would be getting this pleasure focus. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can be, definitely satisfying, especially for your relationships. But on the other hand, it's still it's not the same as Venus being in your own sign where it's kind of puffing you up or making you more attractive or directly experiencing that pleasure, if that makes sense. Another reason why Venus entering Aries is important for you is because you have your North Node at 2 degrees Aries. Excuse me. So this is also kind of a double-edged sword because I have to say it like it is, unfortunately. But the North Node is the reason why I say it's a double-edged sword is because on the more negative side or a more challenging side, it's something that we're not experienced with. It's kind of hard or uncomfortable. It typically represents our, getting outside of our comfort zone. So it's not familiar. It's not always fun or pleasant. It's not easy for us to do. Um, you have South Node in Libra, so you're more naturally suited for kind of being more a more Libra type, so being more easygoing, flexible, living vicariously through other people, being a more observer. It's harder for you to be more like an Aries with your North Node there, so to be more outgoing and self-centered and fiery and independent. That's an energy that's not familiar to you. However, North Node being in Aries and transiting Venus being in Aries as well shows that it would be extra, abundant and pleasurable, and more importantly, suitable for your soul growth if you learn to incorporate the Aries energy and archetype. So if you learn to be more outgoing and more individualistic and all those kind of Aries themes, that's where your soul is kind of headed toward in this life, in being more fiery, more outgoing, etc. And Venus crossing over this point just shows extra abundance or pleasure in that area for you if you do, embrace getting out of your comfort zone and kind of putting on that more Aries face or way of being, if that makes sense. Okay, and Venus will be in Aries for the rest of this forecast as well. So it'll be at least in that sign of your North Node and Descendant for the whole forecast. But I'll let you know when it crosses over those specific points here as we go on. Let's jump forward to May 5th here. I'm sorry. I know this is a little bit chaotic here, but hopefully you can bear with me. So going forward to May 5th, Sun crosses over Uranus at 14 degrees Taurus, and in your chart, Sun and Uranus are trining your Mars from the 7th house, I believe. So this shows some major unpredictability, volatility, and dramatic changes in your relationship. So again, maybe meeting new people, maybe having friendships or connections end or start, or also maybe just the way you are. Your friendships themselves may be changing dramatically. So maybe you're spending a lot more with people that you weren't before, or spending a lot less with certain people. Um, that kind of thing, or you're everything's kind of up for change in those areas here. And because the Sun and Uranus are trining your Mars, I would be careful with this. This is a trine, so it's a harmonious energy. It's typically really easy to work with. But whenever we have Mars triggered in the in the astrology, Mars can bring out kind of mood swings, or we may be feeling irritable or anxious. And also Mars can trigger accidents, sometimes violent accidents. So this is a trine. It looks like a nice aspect, but I would always just be extra careful. I know this already happened, but May 5th may have been a kind of volatile day. There may have been some kind of accidents, but at the same time, this also could have been good in terms of changing or shaking up your relationships. And then going from May 5th through May 7th, we have Sun and Taurus with Moon in Cancer. And I know you said that you've been having a tough time, but looking at these planets here, I thought that this would be positive for you. So I'm not sure what might have happened those couple days. It's about a week ago as I'm making this now, but Sun in Taurus would be trining your Sun in Virgo. Moon in Cancer is crossing over your Moon, which was in Cancer. So these energies I feel like would be relatively easy to work with. We still have this big cluster in Pisces that's kind of opposing your Virgo planets. But the Sun and Moon are definitely in a very harmonious aspect to one another, and they're also in a harmonious aspect or aspects to your Sun and Moon in your natal chart. So May 5th through May 7th seemed like a couple days that looked particularly positive or easy for you. At least that's what I would expect here. Okay, and then going to May 10th, we have May 10th, Jupiter enters Aries. This is a big deal too. So I already kind of talked about why Aries is important for you. Now, Aries is not a place where you resonate highly with. It's not where like you don't have an Aries type personality necessarily because you don't have a lot of planets there. But Aries is important in your chart because again it's your north node, so it's where your soul is going to in this life. It's where you're learning to embrace that type of energy, and it's also where your descendant is. So that's your relationship sector, who you attract, the other people in your life, other friendships and romantic relationships have an Aries nature to them. And then also lastly, you do have your Jupiter there. So Jupiter, transiting Jupiter, entering Aries. Although your Jupiter is way at the end of Aries, this is still exciting, I think, because it means that you're approaching that Jupiter return that I talked about. So you're approaching much easier and harmonious times in the near future where you can expand. And that's something that I talked about emailing you, but that I wanted to revisit again is that whenever we have really challenging aspects in astrology, there's always easier aspects coming on the horizon. So that is really nice. It's something nice about astrology that the harder the aspect or the more challenging aspects you have, it means that there are easier ones coming. So that's something to look forward to here. Okay, so Jupiter entering Aries shows that you may really experience a lot of soul growth, getting out of your comfort zone, being more outgoing, being more fiery, more individualistic. And again, this may be uncomfortable for you, but I encourage you to embrace those types of themes. Excuse me, I'm going to just flow by those real quick here. And you can even look up information about Aries or Sun in Aries just to get a general feel for the Aries archetype, because that's what you're meant to work toward, and that's what Jupiter and Venus being in Aries can help you explore. I've already kind of covered a lot of those keywords and general themes for Aries, but in short, Aries is an individualistic sign, and it's also great at initiating things. And it's a very simple sign. You know, you have these more complex energies, Cancer, Virgo, and Libra, which are dealing with many different feelings, many different thoughts, considering other people's points of view. So it may be refreshing. You know, you are naturally suited for that type of thinking, but at the same time, it may be refreshing for you to get out of your comfort zone and put on a more Aries type of approach, because it's a very simplistic approach. With Aries, everything is kind of black or white, and that's why they're so confident. Is because they know, you know, it's either do or don't. There's no kind of nuance there that they have to worry about as much as like your energies, for example. So yeah, Jupiter entering Aries. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but I think, you know, because it does require you getting out of your comfort zone, but I think that can be exciting for your soul growth and stuff. And then also Jupiter, you know, approaching that descendant means expansion and positivity with your relationships. It's a lot like Venus approaching your descendant. Both are benefics, both bring expansion, abundance, and pleasure. But again, they're both on your descendant, so they're bringing the expansion and pleasure to your relationships, to the people in your life. So it's not something you're experiencing directly, it's something you're experiencing through the people in your life, if that makes sense. And even, you know, kind of a weird like side effect of this would be like people in your life might be making more money around this time with Venus and Jupiter there. Like they might just be having a real easy, fun time. And again, you know, I wish some of this energy was more directed at you personally, so that you could benefit from this maybe more directly. But you can still benefit from that, at least vicariously. It's always interesting in astrology how it doesn't just pertain to us directly, but also to the people in our lives. It's kind of mind blowing in that regard. Okay, also on May 10th, Mercury turns retrograde at 4 degrees Gemini. Let me go to the transits here. Okay, so this is a big deal. It's a big transition point because, again, this is your 8th house. So starting on May 10th, you're really revisiting and rethinking, you know, which relationships in your life should you invest in, you know, and that's family, friends, romantic, or otherwise. Every connection in your life, I think, right now is a time for revisiting and thinking, you know, is this mutually beneficial? Because we would prefer, you know, all relationships to be mutually beneficial, I think. You know, do you feel supported? Do you feel secure with the relationships in your life? That's a lot of what the 8th house is about as well. Are there people that owe you money, or do you owe other people money? Also, what's your relationship like with, you know, your debt or inheritance, credit cards, you know, bank accounts, that type of thing? All of that is up for review, and with Mercury retrograde, there may be delays in those areas as well. So this is a time of change, getting more insight and maybe figuring things out more in all of those areas that I kind of listed off. But for the time being, there's not a lot of. It's not that there's a lot more activity in those areas necessarily. It's more that there's a delay in those areas so that you can gain insight there. So you may figure out things that have happened in the past with your money or other people's money or your relationships that you didn't really realize before. And with that added insight that you'll gain over the next few weeks with Mercury retrograding in this part of your chart, um, eventually you will apply it. Once Mercury turns direct next month, um, then that's where you can apply that new insight and really move forward in a powerful way with your relationships and your money situation and all of that. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'll continue to bring that up, you know, as it comes up in the astrology here. All right, but let's jump forward right now to May 12th. So May 12th. May 12th, we have Venus conjoining the descendant. So Venus is at 11 degrees Aries, and your descendant is at 11 degrees Aries. So Venus crossing over your descendant. Now, I already talked about a lot of these themes with Venus entering that sign in general, but now it becomes much more acute with Venus really, really showering that pleasure and abundance on the relationships in your life, the people in your life. So again, they may be having a really easy time financially and otherwise. They may be extra attractive and pleasant to be around. And so that's something that you can experience through them. But again, you know, on the other hand, at the same time, Venus is opposing your ascendant. So it's almost like, you know, I know I keep saying it, and it's not the most fun energy to work with in the world, but Venus is showering that abundance on other people in your life. It's not showering that on you directly. Um, so it's such a mixed bag. It's you, but I think you can deal with this pretty well. Being having Libra, South Node, and Ascendant, I think you're already pretty much situated for living vicariously through other people, living through the relationships in your life. So this is something that you can still capitalize on and enjoy for the time being. This can also just mean that there's abundance with your relationships. So maybe your relationships are improving at this time, starting on May 12th here, because you've entered a new cycle. Venus has completed a whole cycle around your chart relative to the descendant, and then now it's bringing that energy there back again. So it's bringing this new cycle to your relationships, new abundance there. So that is something to look forward to in that regard, for sure. Okay, and then also with Venus crossing over your descendant, that means Venus is entering your 7th house. So Venus will continue to shower abundance and pleasure on the sector of your life concerning relationships for the rest of this forecast. Okay. Okay, going to May 13th, Sun crosses over the North Node. This is something kind of minor, but I just wanted to give it a shout out here. Sun crossing over North Node at 22 degrees Taurus, and that falls in your 8th house. So this could show some kind of dramatic change with your finances, your people that you're investing in, finances that you're investing in. It's a dramatic change, but the North Node is generally, especially in transits, it's more positive or easy to work with. So I would expect maybe a positive synchronicity, a positive coincidence, something improving your financial situation or improving um, shared resources between you and other people again. So hopefully I've kind of covered those enough that you know what I'm talking about. And that can concern the people that you're living with, or it can concern anyone that you're banking with, or stocks, credit cards, etc. There may be some kind of positive change there. And honestly, this positive change on the 13th, I don't think is necessarily, and this is today, so that's kind of exciting, but I don't think it's necessarily something that you're like working for. I think it's something that kind of just comes out of the blue that maybe you weren't expecting. It's some kind of coincidence, or something just lines up in a way that you maybe didn't expect. So that's something to look out for here. And in general for this month, although it may be uncomfortable, dealing with these changes with your finances. Not this aspect in particular so much, but just in general with aspects happening in this general area. It may be difficult, but once you've gone through this experience, having gone through all these changes, your finances and your debts and inheritances, all of that should look much better and be much better than it was before having gone through all these changes. So that's again something to look out for. Let's go forward to May 14th. This is just a kind of small but major aspect that looked really positive, something to look forward to. So tomorrow, as I'm making this, May 14th, the transiting sun is at 23 degrees Taurus, so it makes a trine to your natal sun, which is at 23 degrees Virgo. Okay, so this would just be a generally easy or pleasant day. It's a day where you know who you are, you're sure of yourself. Things are at least simple, relatively. And again, of course, we have to take into account all the other aspects going on, but this would be at least a good day, I would think. Fingers crossed, but it's a really strong aspect for you. So that's just something to look out for here. And then we do have some major stuff going on going into May 15th. Technically, this full moon lunar eclipse is very early May 16th. I think it's just after midnight. You can see here by noon Central Time, with your time zone here, or no, excuse me, Mountain Time, Wyoming. By noon, honestly, I don't know what time zone it is, but I set it for Sheridan, Wyoming, so it should be your time. But even by noon, the moon has already left the full moon aspect and entered Sagittarius. So my point is very technical. If we want to get technical, very, very early on, I believe it's Monday, May 16th, there's a full moon lunar eclipse happening at 25 degrees Scorpio. And this, excuse me, this is in your second house. So this is more, it's not about shared resources, shared money, although it does pertain a little bit to that as well. But this is mostly signifying a major change and culmination in your personal finances. So it's not how you support yourself with other people, it's how are you supporting yourself directly. That's what the second house pertains to. So, how do you literally, make money and support yourself in a very direct way? Second house also pertains to more of like, cash on hand or resources on hand. So opposing that, eighth house is a lot more complicated. It's like loans and debts and, money that's owed to you or whatever, money involving other people. But the second house where this eclipse happens is much more simple. It's just money that you have on hand, money that you made that is just for you. It's how you support yourself directly. So with this full moon lunar eclipse happening in that area of your chart, I would expect some major changes there. Maybe revisiting that, and it could be multiple different things. It could be just realizing like, wow, I haven't been supporting myself the way I should or the way I can. I have more resources available to me if I invest in myself. Or it could just be maybe gaining resources. Maybe you're making a lot of money at this time. Um, some kind of change with the money that or the ways that you're supporting yourself. It doesn't have to just be money, but a lot of it is financial. Um, what else here? Major changes. And with eclipses, we do have that kind of eerie, like trippy energy. So this could come as like an accident or a coincidence, a synchronicity where you end up with money somehow, or there's a change with your financial situation. But um, a lot of people ask me like, is this good or bad? And although it's never truly that simple, I would say this is generally more good than bad for sure. I would expect, some kind of positive change with your personal financial situation on May 15th going into May 16th. All right. Okay, and then let's jump. And then one last thing. So this full moon lunar eclipse does sextile your natal sun pretty closely. So that also shows that it would be positive, that there's that harmonious aspect with your own astrology. So this new change with your finances, it's something that you can adapt to very readily. It's something that's generally positive or easy to experience for you. Okay. Going forward to May 18th, we have Mars conjoining Neptune at 25 degrees Pisces, so right here. And in your chart, let's see where 25 degrees Pisces is. I know you can't see it. There we go. 25 degrees Pisces is your sixth house. So sixth house, like we've talked about before, is it's also one of the harder houses to experience. It has to do with kind of like the maintenance of your life. So things that we have to do to work on to keep us satisfactory, but it's not really a pleasant house to be in. A lot of it pertains to like health, for instance, or if you have a job that it's not necessarily your dream job or your career, but it's just a job you have to have in the meantime just to get by. That would be a sixth house type of thing. Or like health is a good example, because health isn't typically something that we feel super enthusiastically about. It's not a euphoric thing. It's just something we have to keep in mind to keep satisfactory. Like the most positive outcome is just being like normal, basically, if that makes sense. Um, so anyway, so with Mars conjoining Neptune, I would watch out, especially for your health, and this pertains to both physical health as well as mental health. There could be some kind of accident or mishap there, and I'm telling you this not because I want it to come true. I don't want you to say like, "Wow, you were so right. I had a breakdown on that day." That's not what I want. I'm saying this so that you can maybe avoid it or minimize it. So, for instance, if you wake up on what is it, May 18th, and you don't feel good, you have a headache, I'd really encourage you to do everything you can to support yourself. If you need to take the time out of work, I would really strongly encourage that, because if this isn't looked after, it can definitely snowball into something much bigger. Neptune is very confusing. It's kind of wishy-washy. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And then Mars is very volatile. So having those both in your area of health and, um, life maintenance again, it's something I wouldn't want to mess around with. It's something I'd want to definitely, use moderation, use common sense, and yeah, if you're not feeling well, listen to yourself and, do whatever you need to do on this day because it can definitely, blow up into something bigger than it has to be, I think. So that's kind of a warning I wanted to give you, I guess, for May 18th. And again, a lot of that's mental too. If you wake up and, I don't know, maybe you just need a personal day. Maybe you're just feeling stressed or because Neptune and Pisces, they can kind of make us feel crazy, especially for you with all your Virgo energies. You're not, Pisces is hard because it doesn't make sense. It's not always clear what the problem is or what the solution is. It's very tricky in that regard. So I would definitely advise maybe rest, or if you need to stay home, if you need to just kind of take an easy day, I would definitely encourage you to do that on May 18th. All right, and then going to May 20th, Sun enters Gemini. The beginning of Gemini is still your eighth house, so it still pertains to those shared resources, the investments, the debts, inheritances, the credit cards, or if you have roommates, it has to do with the rent. Whatever those finances or resources are that you don't directly take care of, that you have to work with other people to manage. That's where the focus is as Sun enters Gemini here. And again, this is hard. I'm not gonna lie to you. Uh, eighth house is it's still a difficult house to experience. So like I said, it won't be really till June that things will start to get a lot easier for you. That you'll be in your own element. But still, that's not that far away. So it's I would still be an optimist. Things are going to get better relatively soon. But yeah, this right now the focus is just how can you improve those financial situations, or that's what the astrology is showing, that that's where you can look to your life if you wish for like improvement or that kind of thing. Okay, and then going one day forward to May 21st. Mercury retrograde conjoins the sun, so this is kind of a tricky aspect. Mercury's traveling backward, at least from our perception or perspective from Earth, and then the sun is traveling forward, so they cross over each other very quickly. And this is showing even more so that the focus is very much on your finances. With Mercury retrograde, with Sun crossing Mercury retrograde, it's almost like it shines a light on Mercury. It actually shines a light so bright that it completely drowns out Mercury retrograde, so we can't even see it in the sky at all. But in astrology, it's showing that it's bringing the focus to Mercury. So, like the focus that Mercury retrograde was already bringing, with maybe for you revisiting your finances or your relationships, rethinking those situations. With Sun crossing Mercury, it brings the attention there even more so, even in a more dramatic way. So, this could really be a day where you get a lot of insight with your finances, with your shared resources, with any kind of intimate relationships that you are really counting on them and they're counting on you, that you rely on one another. There could be a lot of changes there, or maybe just learning things that may have happened in the past, or getting a different insight with your situation. And Mercury retrograde is also great for being intuitive, or tapping into our own intuitive, psychic abilities. So it may be that you kind of just have a sudden realization or have an intuitive message. I know that I would say that you are very intuitive with your Cancer astrology, and even Virgo and Libra too. That you may pick up some interesting information regarding your financial situation, your shared resources on May 21st here. And that's all I can really say. What you do with that extra information and intuition is up to you. But that's just something I see here on May 21st. Going to May 24th, and then going in, well, May 24th and May 25th, the moon will be crossing through Aries, and as it does, it will be crossing over Mars, Jupiter, Chiron, and Venus, all in Aries. So now there's not so much a cluster in Pisces like there was when I talked about at the beginning of this forecast. Now the energy is much more focused on Aries, and again, that's kind of a big deal for you because that's your relationship. So meeting new people, redefining your current relationships. That's dramatically where the focus is. All these planets and the moon are really encouraging that. I think Jupiter is expanding your relationships. Maybe you're spending more time with people in your life. Mars is asking for dramatic change. It's putting some edginess with your relationships, some volatility there. Moon is putting the general focus there. Venus is bringing harmony and abundance or pleasure to your relationships. So really, it's a pretty mixed bag. But the general focus is saying a lot is going on there. So it's not just with shared resources. It's also with everything, with your friendships, coworkers, all the relationships in your life, both shallow and deep. I would expect some major changes there. So that's just something to look out for. I'm just telling you this so you can kind of be aware, I think. Um, so it won't catch you off guard, I guess. All right, let's jump to May 27th. Transiting Venus is flying by. It's already approaching the end of Aries, and it crosses over 28 degrees Aries, so that's where your natal Jupiter is. So this is really great with, like, Venus and Jupiter are the two easiest planets to work with. They're the two benefics, so they're beneficial. They're really great. They both shower us with pleasure and abundance and make things generally pretty easy. They do both have some kind of downfalls or some kind of challenging attributes, but much less so than any other planet in astrology. So that's why they're the easy. They're teachers still, just like all the planets, but they're pretty easy teachers. So with Venus crossing over your natal Jupiter, with those two benefics kind of lining up, this would be a really positive omen, I guess. So this could just mean that you're experiencing a lot of pleasure or abundance, and I believe it's still in your seventh house. Let me double check. Yes, it is. So you may be experiencing a lot of pleasure and abundance, but it's still through other people. It's through the relationships in your life. So maybe someone brings you abundance in your life, or maybe someone that you have a deep connection with. Their life is improving dramatically, and so your life is as well through them. Something of that nature. So pleasure and abundance, but still through other people in your life, involving other people, coming from other people in your life. And it could be a million different things. I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe someone came to you with a good connection, so you can make more money at work or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Some kind of abundance though from other people. Okay, and then May. Oh, and I put a dollar sign and smiley face there. So that's it's money and good times. A lot of times it is financial abundance, but it could also just be easy times, pleasant times. Um, on May 27th. So that's definitely something to look forward to. Something positive and easy, I would say. May 29th, transiting Mars conjoins transiting Mars conjoins transiting Jupiter. So they're both at 3 degrees Jupiter here. And again, going back to your chart, that's right next to your south node, or excuse me, your north node. Your north node is at 2 degrees Aries, and then transiting Mars and Jupiter are at 3 degrees Aries, so very close. And they're also pretty close to your descendant, which is at 11 degrees Aries. Okay, so this, again, we're coming back to your north node. So this may be uncomfortable, but Mars and Jupiter coming together are really powerful because Mars is that spark. It's that spark of initiation and ambition. It's very motivating for us. It gives us a lot of energy. Mars is that fiery kind of warrior god or spirit. And then Jupiter is bringing that expansion. So when you bring Mars and Jupiter together, it's almost like Jupiter is the dynamite, and then Mars is that spark that lights the dynamite and blows it up. Okay, so this can go. I mean, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. On a more negative side, it could mean being overly zealous or ambitious. Maybe things blowing up out of proportion. And this is especially targeting your north node. So this could mean I don't know, maybe being thrown into to a situation where you don't feel comfortable, you're out of your element. That's the only kind of negative way I could take this, but I would see this as generally being very positive. Um, it's wanting to bring, well, for one, it's wanting to bring new energy to your relationship. So there's a lot of redefining going on there, and I think that's why you may have been very dissatisfied with your relationships in early May. Excuse me, because that's what kind of always happens. First you experience the dissatisfaction, and then later that's where the change comes. You wouldn't have that new change and that new improvement if you were just satisfied with everything and if everything was just great all the time. So that's something that I see that I would be kind of excited for. I think there's maybe a new outlook that you can have with your relationships, or maybe new friendships or relationships in your life that could come about here. But secondly, with these happening right by your north node, this could be really great for triggering a lot of quick soul growth and increased consciousness for you, because again, the north node is all about soul growth and increased consciousness. It is about getting outside of our comfort zone, but in a way which is, it's out of our comfort zone, but it's in a way that we're truly meant to go to. So um, it may be something that you're not familiar with, but it's something that will be rewarding for you, because that's where you're meant to go in this life. So there may be some kind of event on the 29th that pushes you to having to be more individualistic, or more, maybe a little bit more self-centered, more outgoing, maybe having to be a leader of something. And this is something I would really encourage you to do. This is something that would be good for you. Maybe you learn to kind of allow things to be a little bit simple at times, and I'm not saying to completely disregard these unique gifts that you're born with. You're good at handling a lot of analysis and nuance. You're good at understanding other people, and definitely keep all that. I'm not saying to disregard that, but what this aspect is showing is that you can also incorporate that independent streak as well, or being kind of fiery or gregarious, being outgoing, outspoken at times as well. Speaking your personal truth and delivering that in a kind of confident and uncompromising way. That's kind of what I would suggest on May 29th. So on the one hand, it could be a little bit uncomfortable because it's asking you to get out of your comfort zone. But on the other hand, this could be really, really valuable for getting on the right track with what you're meant to do in this life, and I don't know, self improvement, self evolution, that type of thing. Being more outgoing and confident, because that's what I see as you're kind of meant to do in this life here. Okay, and then going forward, we're almost done. I'm just going to cover one thing on May 30th, and then one on June 1st, and then we'll wrap this up here. Because this is already, how long is this? This is already 52 minutes long. Okay. Okay, so May 30th, there is a new moon solar eclipse again, and I believe this will wrap up the eclipse cycle. So, once the moon comes around to being a full moon in 2 weeks after May 30th, the sun and moon will be far enough from the nodes that they won't be eclipses, so we can kind of resume going back to normal a little bit. But with this new moon solar eclipse happening at 9 degrees Gemini, it is still in your 8th house. So there's still those new beginnings, new perspective, new developments happening with your shared resources, with those things that I kind of articulated earlier. What else here? Yeah, gaining perspective, new developments there. That's really what I would see. And again, like I said, this is the last solar eclipse of this eclipse season. So this should mark the beginning of the end of these new developments for you. So this is changing things a lot, but this is the last wave or burst of new energy and new changes in your area of shared resources and intimacy, money, debts, loans, inheritances, etc. It's the last wave of new energy and new developments there that will happen for some time now. Okay, and it's pretty close to your ninth house. So what I would say, eighth and ninth house, right around the eighth and ninth house cusp, things become more deep and more kind of philosophical. We become, searching. We want to search for truths, for hidden truths, for higher knowledge. So many of us turn to astrology, or we turn to religion or spirituality. University also falls into this. Wherever you go to seek higher wisdom or higher truths, you can go to nature for that. You can go to many different places. But that's beginning to become the focus with this new moon solar eclipse happening so close to your ninth house. You're beginning to, coming out of this eighth house transit, it is difficult, but coming out of that, you're becoming more public. The planets, the transiting planets relative to your natal chart they're coming around to a much more public zone of your chart. So they're beginning to start to energize your career and your public life. So that's where your focus is generally gradually starting to shift to. Okay, and again, also the first part of that is shifting to higher knowledge and higher wisdom and consciousness, etc., higher learning. So that's the focus that's where it's shifting to, and I think this would be welcomed by you because this would be the start of much, I would say, easier transits than the eighth house. Eighth house can be difficult. Ninth house gets a lot stronger here. So Sun and Moon are almost just about to enter that area for you, and then following them would be Mercury after it turns direct, and then eventually Venus and Mars as well. So it's we're on the cutting edge. We're on the there's much easier times on the horizon is what I'm trying to say, especially in regard to your career and public life. Things should get you should get a lot more momentum in those areas. And one last thing is that the reason why that's easier is because I don't know, it's easier to experience um like with this extra energy in your public life, things are more directly you're more in your own element and the energies are more directly supporting you and agreeing with you rather than just agreeing and supporting with people in your life, and asking you to live vicariously through them. So the planets are beginning to come around to your general part of the zodiac, and so yeah, there should be much easier times ahead here. Okay, and then last thing I'll cover is if we jump forward to June 1st, we have Moon enters Cancer here, and this to me is really great because again, you have your natal Moon in Cancer, so Moon crossing through your own Moon sign. You're in your element on this day. That's what I would expect. You're kind of in your element, especially emotionally and with intuition. Those kinds of lunar themes. You're feeling secure emotionally, and you're more intuitive. And this is really great because those are themes that you already embody much of the time. Being having Cancer Moon, having Moon in domicile, you are very sure of yourself emotionally. You feel deep emotions, and you have um, very phenomenal intuition. So Moon crossing over Cancer is just kind of reminding you of all those things, and really enhancing those traits that you already have in those areas. So that's what I have for you for this month. So in short, yes, I can see why it would be difficult. Um, to be totally honest, I wouldn't necessarily expect. Well, I was gonna say I wouldn't expect dramatic improvements, but that's not necessarily true. If there are dramatic improvements this month for you, I would definitely expect them to be with shared resources, with shared money. I think your financial situation can improve a lot this month. Otherwise, though, for experiencing like generally really easy times or fun times, I see that mostly happening in June. I think is more of the transition with when the planets come around to your part of the chart more so. Okay, and then yeah, and feel free to continue corresponding with me. I'd love to see kind of how things go. Um, yeah, just let me know. And yeah, and for anyone else, thanks for watching. I guess thanks for going along this journey with us. Okay, and I'm gonna wrap this up. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.